Hey everyone, it's 2023! Happy New Year! Last year was absolutely filled with amazing media, and as such, this video is going to be directly to the point and a little less structured than my other stuff. This isn't to say I'll be rushing, it won't be disorganized, but there were dozens upon dozens of great projects from last year that had an impact on me, and I don't want to waste any time in breaking them all down. So, without any further ado, let's go! The first album we have on the list is Vince Staples' Ramona Park Broke My Heart, which is a sort of companion piece to his 2021 album, which is also excellent. It's a fantastic eulogy for stolen youth, an examination of how trauma from a young age shapes us as we grow older. I've had a hard time deciding which of these two albums I like more, but one thing is for certain. Ramona Park is an excellent work. Dawn FM came extremely early in the year, and thus a lot of people might have forgotten it. Releasing only 7 days into 2022, The Weeknd partnered with Jim Carrey, of all people, to bring the listener a great journey through purgatory in the typical synth-pop style that we've come to expect from the artist. It's got endless re-listenability, and it's a very smooth journey throughout. It's not my favorite album of his, but it is, I think, one of his best. The Forever Story by Jid, or J-I-D, or however you want to pronounce his name, is an extremely overwhelming work from a master of lyricism. The artist masterfully weaves themes of family, legacy, and upbringing through this wonderful album, all leading to the epic conclusion 2007, which can only be found on the album's extended version. And in fact, if not for the next inclusion in this section, The Forever Story easily would have been the best hip-hop album of last year. However, after a long hiatus, Kendrick Lamar returns to remind everyone that he truly is the greatest to ever do it. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is a triumphant piece, focusing not on the ills of society, but instead of the individual. Lamar tackles several larger-than-life ideas such as fatherhood, trans rights, and the complex battle between one's image and one's true nature. It's fantastic. It's filled with energy and life, quiet reflections, and thoughtful examinations, and while it's not my favorite album of Kendrick's, it's certainly pretty amazing. Next up is my favorite album of the year, Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. This album is just wow. It's wow. It's soft, it's melodic, it's loud, it's cacophonous, it's 10 million things at once, and at its basis, it's an album filled with masterfully composed music. And while it's easy to try and analyze it to hell like I have with the other albums on my list, I like to just let it breathe, rather than trying to pick it apart and rob it of its ethereal nature. It's just wow. And lastly, I want to do some honorable mentions of some albums that I really enjoyed but don't have that much to say about. There's only 3, but my honorable mentions would have to be Renaissance by Beyonce, Midnights by Taylor Swift, and Harry's House by Harry Styles. Last year was a great year for the gaming industry. I've already made a video about one of my favorites of the year, Elden Ring, and since the Game Awards awarded it the official Game of the Year, I do not ever have to talk about Morbius again on this channel. Thank God. Another great game is Slow Clap Studios' Sifu, an action game that wears its love of original kung fu movies on its sleeve. It's a game that demands perfection, which is probably why I never beat the final boss. However, I played everything up until that point and I nearly mastered the demanding combat system, and it is incredibly rewarding. It's so fun to move through the intricate levels like a damn machine, a whirlwind of fists and feet knocking down everything in your way. I can't wait to see what this studio does next. Next up is Cult of the Lamb, a cute little indie game from Massive Monster. I say cute, but really the reality of the game is quite grim. It's all about a lamb that is sacrificed to an evil satanic god. The lamb is then chosen by benevolent deities to be the leader of a cult in their name. You go through the game recruiting tiny little animals and making them do whatever you want. If you want to, you can even make them eat their own shit. It's extremely macabre. However, it's very fun, and I spent hours upon hours forcing my little acolytes to pray to me and establish me as their one true god. It's got a great art style, clever fusions of genre, and overall, it's just a really relaxing, fun experience. I also went through a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles phase in late 2022, and as such, I simply had to pick up the new game from Tribute, TMNT Shredder's Revenge. While I do wish that the TMNT games were able to break free from the confines of being side-scroller beat-em-ups, this one is a great addition to the pile. It's got great art direction, a fantastic soundtrack, a fun 6-player co-op mode, and as IGN would say, it really makes you feel like a hero in a half-shell. And now we come to my favorite game of 2022, God of War Ragnarok. Or, as Al Pacino says, God of War Ragannok.
I'm working out now. This is heavy. Finally, I didn't work out today, so I'm doing... You don't mind, do you, if I do a little each? The best performance winner, Christopher Judge for God of War Ragannok.
Ragannok is a fantastic sequel, taking the epic scale of the 2018 reboot and elevating it times infinity. The story is packed with characters constantly unfolding with more and more plot, more action, but it never loses the heart and soul that exists at the core of this new God of War series. Kratos and Atreus' journey is heartfelt and sincere, building on their character development from the previous installment. I had the pleasure of playing this on a PS5, and it was just an absolute force. I will never forget the joys and the sorrows that came along with this game. The TV section will be the shortest section of the video, as not many shows that came out last year impressed me, but there were 4 shows that really stood out. First up is House of the Dragon, which is a legendary return to George R.R. Martin's universe. While everyone sits in anticipation waiting for a final book that will probably never come out, we can turn our gaze back to the boob tube as the Game of Thrones franchise returns back to TV. House of the Dragon felt like the writers acknowledging the mistakes of the final season of the predecessor and opting to return to the thing that made the early seasons of Game of Thrones work so well. The prequel, centered around the middle of the Targaryen dynasty in Westeros, focuses on political intrigue, backstabbing, marriages, alliances, and most importantly, incest. Good old-fashioned Westerosi incest. Obviously, as the show is about the overarching story of the Dance of Dragons, a war between the Targaryens that killed many people, the later seasons will most likely delve into a familiar action-packed war-centered style. And nobody can speak to the quality of later seasons yet. But as for now, we're left with a fantastic political thriller that feels both familiar and new. Next is Better Call Saul Season 6, the finale to the prequel to Breaking Bad, one of the most popular shows of all time. Better Call Saul is my second favorite show ever, and as such, I had extreme expectations for this final season. Let me just say, they were met. In fact, my expectations were exceeded. I am one of the people that has always found Better Call Saul to be more entertaining than its predecessor, and this season was no exception to that rule. Filled with suspense and riveting drama, the showrunners take us right up to the point we left off in Breaking Bad's final episode and then go beyond. It is an absolute triumph with a bittersweet ending that leaves you wanting to go back and start it over again. Barry Season 3 also premiered last year, and to this day I've never seen a show that interweaves comedy and drama so well. The stress that I felt while watching this season of television will never be matched. There really isn't much I have to say about Barry other than it's literally one of the best television shows out right now. All 3 seasons are gripping and amazingly entertaining, and I cannot wait for the final season this year. Finally, my favorite show of the year was Apple TV's Severance. I've always been a huge Adam Scott fan. He's not in much, but whatever he is in, I really enjoy him. I think he's a very subtle actor, and I wanted to check out his newest soiree into TV. Severance is great. It's mind-bending, it's a suspenseful thriller that has a fantastic cast to go along with it. Everyone gives their role their all. In fact, John Turturro and Adam Scott are often overshadowed by the performances of their co-stars, Britt Lauer and Zach Cherry. I cannot wait until Season 2, as the cliffhanger in Season 1 finale had me absolutely clinging to the edge of my seat. Okay, now we're at the movies, and last year was a monolithic year for film, absolutely packed to the gills with beautiful, fun, and amazing stuff. And as such, if I spent time breaking down everything that works about everything I loved, I'd be here all day. So let's just run it down. Bullet Train was probably the most fun movie I saw last year. It was a pure adrenaline rush from start to finish with a lot of style to boot. Rise of the TMNT, the movie, was a very stylish animated flick, serving as the perfect end cap to an already great show. I hope more TMNT projects can be as fun as this was in the future, and I have high hopes for this year's new film, Mutant Mayhem. X and Pearl were both pretty okay horror movies, but I just found great pleasure in seeing a director go, "Oh, cool, you guys like that? Well, I got another one under my belt coming out in like 5 months." Nope was really enjoyable and is probably the film from Jordan Peele that I enjoy the most. There are many themes to break down in this complex alien thriller, but I think the one we should come away with is don't film anything with real chimpanzees. The Fabelmans was yet another great film from one of the world's greatest filmmakers, Steven Spielberg. Part of it are autobiographical, parts of it are entirely fictitious, but one thing's for sure, David Lynch is in it. I saw Glass Onion alone in a theater, which made me sad, but the film itself is absolutely thrilling. A riveting mystery filled with twists and turns that keeps you guessing to the end. Perhaps it's time the internet finally woke up and realized that Rian Johnson is... he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Brian and Charles was a wholesome little flick that left me with a big stupid smile on my face and left me wondering how hard it would be to make a robot out of stuff I have laying around my apartment. Honk for Jesus was a movie that snuck by me until the last moment of 2022. It caught my attention by casting one of my favorite actors, Sterling K. Brown, but the surprising standout of this movie is Regina Hall, who gives a fantastic performance that really drives the point of the movie home. The Batman was easily one of the best films of last year. Though a little long in some parts, it dares to ask the scariest question of all. What if superhero movies were filmed with, intent behind a lot of the shots? Scream 5, or just Scream, is probably the second best film in this whole franchise, of which I have recently become obsessed. However, one of the things that really holds it back is the baffling decision not to spell the title 5 Cream. RRR, or Triple R, is a film that just proves that sometimes all you need is a 3-hour Bollywood epic with dance numbers, amazing stunts, and a guy punching a tiger in the fucking face. 3,000 Years of Longing was one of my favorites of last year for many, many reasons, but perhaps the funniest thing about it was that it was a George Miller film that didn't absolutely traumatize everyone involved in the making of it. Barbarian was a freaky new horror movie that dared to ask the question, what if Bill Skarsgård just played a normal guy? Lightyear was a very heartfelt, action-packed animated flick that was fun for the whole family and nowhere near as good as Toy Story. Top Gun Maverick was fucking epic. Fresh was an entertaining thriller about the absolute worst case of falling in love too fast. Turning Red was the cutest allegory for puberty I've ever seen in my life. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was absolutely mind-boggling in its scale, and its art style leaves me hoping that Into the Spider-Verse continues to have positive effects on animated cinema throughout all of time. The Northman kind of made me sad because unlike Robert Eggers' 2 previous movies, this one was just fine. Not bad at all, but not like anything really that special either. It was just fine. Windfall was enjoyable, if not forgettable. I'll support anything that gives Jason Segel a spotlight, though. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is one of those movies that gets worse the more you think about it, so just go into it with a turned-off brain and you'll love it. I wish it had more Sam Raimi staples in it, though. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was the funniest stroking of a big actor's ego I've seen in a long time. Tar was a bit too long if you ask me, but it was still really good. It was one of my favorites of last year, and it has the most hilarious ending ever. Babylon was another absolutely great addition to the filmography of Damien Chazelle, but my god, the ending left a giant sour taste in my mouth. It was just so stupid. Let's just say, if I wanted to see the blue people from Avatar, I would have walked into the next theater. Speaking of, I saw Avatar: The Way of Water in IMAX 3D with enhanced frame rate, and even though the high FPS kinda gave me a headache, the movie was an absolute triumph, and it proved that you should never bet against James the King Cameron. The Banshees of Inisherin was my second favorite film of last year. It was endlessly hilarious, and both main actors give some of the best performances of their career. I've never seen a main character that I related to so much either. He's just a silly, nice little guy who wants everyone to like him. And finally, my favorite film of last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once. I went back and forth debating whether or not to make an actual full-length video about it, but I wouldn't know what to say. You gotta see it for yourself. Anyways, thanks to everyone who stuck around to the end of the video, and to anyone who stuck with me through 2022. We've got a lot of great stuff to look forward to this year, and I, of course, will be here to cover it all. Well, not all of it. That'd be ridiculous. But you know what I mean.